Mr. Biden and his administration, which is also suffering from a lack of confidence.
Yeah.
Some pretty extraordinary reporting coming out now of mainstream outlets. And before I show it to you, I really think that this comes at a moment when even normie liberals who are like, vote blue no matter who, and you gotta back up the Democratic Party brand because the Republicans are so much worse, even they are seeing the failures of this administration. I really do think it's tied to the overturning of Roe versus Wade and just how manifestly unprepared they were, how lackluster the response has been in spite of having many weeks of warning and ability to sort of get their ducks in a row and know what the response was. They've basically, done sort of less than nothing, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I think that's the context through which this reporting makes some sense and why it's coming right now. So the CNN piece is quite astonishing. I'm going to read you a good bit of this, including the lead, which is, there's a lot going on here. So they say, actress Deborah Messing was fed up. The former Will and Grace star was among dozens of celebrity Democratic supporters and activists who joined a call with the White House aides last Monday to discuss the overturning of Roe versus Wade. The mood was fatalistic, according to people on the call, which was also co-organized by the advocacy group Build Back Better Together. Messing said she had gotten Biden elected and wanted to know why she was being asked to do anything at all, yelling that there didn't even seem to be a point to voting. Others wondered why the call was happening. That afternoon, what did they get? They just got a follow-up email with some basic talking points and suggestions of Biden's speech clips to share on TikTok. So they use that as the lead to lay out this article of just how disenchanted regular Democrats and people within Congress and within the White House are becoming with the Biden administration. They say top Democrats complain the president isn't acting with, or perhaps even capable of, the urgency the moment demands. Rudderless, aimless, and hopeless is how one member of Congress described the White House. 24 leading Democratic politicians and operatives, several within the West Wing, so in the White House themselves, tell CNN they feel this goes deeper than questions of ideology and posture. Instead, they say it gets to questions of basic management. They go on to detail some of the specific frustrations with the lack of response and lack of ability to respond to the overturning of Roe versus Wade. But put this next piece up. The Washington Post kind of had a follow-up piece to this. Their headline is Democratic criticisms of Biden get louder and broader. The part that they really emphasize here, Saagar, is that piece about how there is a lack of managerial competence, that it's not just the ideology, but it's the questions of basic management. Because as we've been saying here for quite some time, Biden's central promise wasn't you're going to get the policy of your dreams and desires. It wasn't that he's going to be this transformational figure. It was the adults are going to be back in charge and we're going to have basic competence operating at the White House again. And so when you see even that is completely falling apart, and predictably, by the way, if you followed what this man's career has been like in Washington and what his management style has been, now that this is being openly acknowledged in the papers, CNN, Washington Post, New York Times has had similar stories to this. This is a dire moment for this president.
This is not good for the president. He's had a kind of a leak-proof White House, so to speak. A lot of his people weren't coming out against him, but even his own staff is pretty disgusted with his managing and handling of all of this. And I think it's bigger than Biden. I don't think it's just Biden. I think it's the entire Democratic leadership. I was reading a really interesting story actually in Vox this morning, which is that there are a lot of staffers at the level who've been working on abortion now for a decade. And they're like, okay, look, we don't have the votes on Roe versus Wade. You know what we do have? We've got votes on rape and incest exceptions. We've got or we could put Republicans in a very tough spot, 90-10 votes on many of these things, and we're not taking any of them. And they point to the fact that if you look in the past, they voted on pre-existing conditions before. They voted on, carve out pieces of their broader legislation because they understood that they could codify that. And Republicans are shocked that they're not trying to put their bosses in any of these positions. Why is the president not doing that? So executive orders is another one. What really struck me was just the sheer lack of competence where they didn't have a statement or action ready to go on the day the decision came because they believed their White House counsel who assured them. He's like, hey, don't worry, the decision's not coming today. First of all, how would he even know? Second, you should probably just plan just in case every single day. We certainly were. The entire time. Didn't know if it was going to come. Had to prep it just in case, we knew what to look for, etc.
you and I were expecting the decision on that day. I mean, that's why you were ready to go and do a segment and get it out in the world. So, like, how is it that we know more than the White House knows?
I knew there was a
about
50% chance. I was like, oh, well, I think it'll probably drop later.
There were only a few days remaining.
There you go.
It had to be one of like the next few days. So, it was not rocket science.
Listen, it just shows you, they quote somebody saying it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall. And just over and over again, you're seeing a lot of people in the administration who are just really disgusted because abortion, that's, the normie lib. Obviously, that's what they're going to care about the most, but gas is a good one. What is beyond shouting at gas stations and saying, please bring down this price? Like, what have you done on inflation, on food? I mean, so many of the pressing issues we're going to talk soon about polling later on in the show, but if you look further at the number one thing that Americans care about, it's 33% is inflation, 20-something% is the economy, which is code for inflation. And I think number 3 is like food prices, which is also inflation. So we're talking here about 60-some% of people are like, hey, I care about inflation. I want you to talk about inflation. I want you to do something about inflation, 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 inflation. Where is the price? What is he doing all day? It just seems completely feckless. He's either abroad, unable to articulate any sort of vision, both for the world and for us here at home. And he's floundering. I mean, I don't think we can overstate just how badly he's doing. And this all is going to culminate in the 2024 election. He's about to get shellacked, probably, and you're doing a midterm on this in the midterms. But regardless, it's going to not be a good showing. He has to come out swinging. The presidents in the past who've been able to win, despite that, Obama and Clinton really mounted a full force campaign in the last 2 years of their first terms in order to try and get reelected. I don't see a lot of that happening here with this pattern.
Look, there's no doubt for voters, number one issue is economy. There's just no doubt about that. But I do think the abortion issue is really key for this sort of like normie Dems and liberal press turning on Biden. Because this is the issue that they have offered as like, this is the reason why you vote for Democrats, to protect women's right to choose. Like, this has been bedrock of Democratic politics for at least the past decade. And so, first of all, when this happened, there was an instant realization of, when the leak came out even, there was this instant realization of, wait a second, Republicans were not quiet about what their goals were here. You knew this was where we were going. You've had opportunities in the past where you had majorities and supermajorities to codify this, to prevent this exact eventuality, and for some reason you didn't do it. And then so the leak comes out, and then they've got 7 weeks to figure out, all right, this is coming, we see it, we've got time to prepare. We can work with the pro-choice groups, figure out what our response is going to be, figure out some legislation we can push, how to divide the GOP caucus, which is like the most obvious no-brainer of all time. And instead, they're caught completely flat-footed, to the point that, the person who's like the point person on responding was like out getting coffee when the decision came down. No response really prepared. Still, here we are, however many days and weeks later, and they still haven't really figured out what it is they're going to do. We had some conference call with governors, and we're going to come up, listen to them and get their ideas, and then we're going to come back to you. Still haven't seen any of those sort of action items come out of that meeting. So I think the fact that on this issue that has been really central to the Democratic message and ideology, that they have so clearly failed to meet the moment, I do think it's been sort of eye-opening for a lot of normie Democrats and the liberal press, and has given them permission to take the gloves off and criticize in a way that they normally don't.
I think the main thing is, and you're going to be the major expert, is to see Democratic politicians begin to turn against him at the state level is very, very significant.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing, and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.